For too long, nonprofits have been climbing an uphill battle and finding support for their organizations. We're here to help you. Real talk, real topics, and real strategy for helping you build your fundraising goals. It's all here for you. I'm your host, Rochelle Jerry, Development Executive and lifelong nonprofit advocate. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Fundraising Confessions. Hi, welcome to Fundraising Confessions, the truth behind the profession. I am so honored to be here with Lillian Barkes. I have enjoyed watching her and listening to our future for many months now, and I'm welcoming her to Fundraising Confessions, where we spill the tea on what it truly takes to raise money to support your mission. I am your host, Rochelle Jerry, CEO of Jerry Consulting Group. And Listen to Our Future is an organization amplifying youth voices and advocacy and storytelling. And we're going to dive into her journey from an idea through a lived experience on building nonprofit and securing funding and keeping the mission alive when times get tough. So, welcome, Lillian. I am so happy you are joining us today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Did you see the intro?
Yes, I did. It looked really good.
I'm so proud of that. Lillian, talk to us a bit about the beginning. Tell us, take us back. What inspired you to start listening to our future?
Yes, so we started in 2020 during the midst of the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement, looking at how that had an impact even here locally in Indianapolis. My friends and I, we were protesting. We were thinking, okay, what next? And I have had the experience of working in education and in school and out of school time, learning environments, summer camp, and on the Near East side of Indy. And it was just such a great experience, but also understanding how the things that were happening on a national scale could impact my students, my peers, my family members, my friends. It was really it was a lot to deal with, and I think we were trying to look for spaces and places for young people to talk about issues in their communities, learn about them, and then have their ideas at the center of change. So, for example, when I was younger, I organized a toy drive. I was in 3rd grade. Hurricane Katrina just happened, and I remember watching the news and being really upset about it. And just like, there's a hurricane um, that I think it was Hurricane Melissa in Jamaica.
Right.
And so
Mhm.
I was like watching a lot of the same things that we're seeing on the news now and just seeing people's lives become completely turned upside down. And my birthday's in November, so that year for my birthday, instead of
Mhm.
having a traditional birthday, I decided to do a toy drive, and I was able to donate over 300 toys to our local community, and through that process, it was really eye-opening for me to learn about, okay, yes, while there is a natural disaster that's happening in New Orleans, what about all the things that are happening here in your city, in your town, in your neighborhood,
Mhm.
in your backyard.
Mhm.
And so I think my parents, they like really opened me up to those experiences um, and how you can just make an impact where you
Yeah,
live. And that's where you should start. Um,
that's awesome.
so that was the first experience. And then, when I was in 8th grade, that is when Trayvon Martin was killed. And
Mhm.
I remember, he was only a couple years older than me, and I was thinking like, "Wow, that could have been one of my peers, that could have been,
Mhm.
someone that I know," and to think that that was happening and then to see other people's response to that what had
Oh
happened,
yeah. Oh
um,
yeah.
I really, as a young person, as a child, expected adults to step up and make sure things like that don't happen again.
Mhm.
But I was very much mistaken, and fast forward 8 years, here we are, 2020, and
Mhm. Yeah, another tragic.
yes, and I'm an adult. So,
Yeah.
I have a part to play in all of this, and if
Mhm.
I want the to uphold the same expectations that I once had for myself for older people, then I need to create space for that to actually happen.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, a lot of times we don't realize we are the change we wanna see, right? And
Yes.
it's that easy, right? So when you were describing those moments in your life, so take us back to the moment you realized this idea needed to become a movement, right?
I think it was honestly, like, my as soon as I stepped into the school system,
Mm,
and really experienced okay, so my first year teaching, it was 2019. I remember they kept saying, "You need to teach with fidelity. You need to follow the curriculum. You need to do all these things." We had a separate reading curriculum, a math curriculum. Um, Science and social studies wasn't really a thing because our students were so low that they used
mhm,
whatever science and social studies time there was to do more reading.
mm.
Um, so it was, and then when I went to teach
Yeah.
math, we did elapsed time, and my students couldn't tell me what time it was on the clock,
Mm,
and then I gave them their first assessment, and every single one of them failed. And I thought that was more of a reflection of me and how I taught them, not a reflection of who they are and their intelligence and their abilities. So I
mhm,
really had to sit with that. And so I was like, okay, there were 3 third grade teachers, myself, and then 2 other. There was one that was following the curriculum and one that was like, "No, I'm not doing this." So as soon as I realized that I needed to maybe follow what she was doing. I was, "Okay, how do I adapt this?" And then we were starting to make really, big changes with my students, but that also meant that I wasn't doing what
mhm,
the district was telling me to and the
mhm.
principals were telling me to. So if I had a walkthrough and they were asking, "Why aren't you doing this?" then that can become like a sticky situation as an educator. And so I
Yeah,
didn't necessarily have the freedom that I wanted to drive meaningful conversation, to encourage students to think critically. On top of that, I was exposed to project-based learning in college, and I was able to be a facilitator at a summer camp, and I thought it was just such an amazing way to learn because it really starts wide and then goes small, whereas traditional education, it starts small and then goes wide. Like, you declare a major in college and you take all your prerequisites, so you gotta start somewhere and then you get narrower and narrower and
mhm.
narrow into what you're trying to learn, but project-based learning kind of flips that on its head where there's multiple possibilities rather than 4 answers to a multiple choice quiz.
Yeah,
Um, and I thought this was so great, like, this is what employers wanna see, and when I got into the classroom, that was not
mhm.
what you could do. We didn't have the luxury to do that.
Yeah,
Um, so I just saw how these inequities really started to compile onto one another to create just
mhm,
inopportune experiences, inopportune ecosystems, inopportune systems of education, and so I was like, "This is we need
yeah,
to we need to make a pivot. We need to make an adjustment." You know, my school, we also had a reading room. So 30 minutes every single day, my students would go off to the reading room. They would work on foundations of reading. So that really allowed me to work on reading comprehension. And when you're in third grade, that's where you go from learning to read to reading to learn. So you really gotta be, yeah, you have to
yes,
be on it. And now they're giving I read to second graders. So if you want to not, I guess, spark their anxiety for standardized testing early, then they need to be able to pass that exam.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, and as a parent, with a child in the fifth grade who went through the practice exams in second grade and then the third grade testing, right? And so now she's in fifth grade and she's like, oh, I got this, right? Like, I know what this is. We do this all the time, right?
Mhm.
We practice and we test and we practice and we test. But there is some anxiety there, at a young age, especially if you don't understand the curriculum, right?
Yes.
And so how do you go from that to running a nonprofit? Like, did your background prepare you to run a nonprofit?
No. No, not at all. Constantly remind myself that I went to school to be a teacher, and so that's what I know, that's what I'm good at.
Yeah.
I think, because I worked for a nonprofit when I was in college, all 4 years, I got a lot of experience with boots on the ground, organization, running programming, and my supervisor at the time, so I was placed at School 14, which is Washington Irving, and my supervisor at the time, she also was kind of like she had her own nonprofit called Unconditional, and I was watching her like, sometimes she would just leave randomly, and I'd be like, "Where's Sarah?" And she's like, "Oh, she's on a call," or she would tell me that, like,
Yeah.
"There's a
Yeah.
situation, if I need to step out for a second, this is what I'm doing." So I saw her do that, and so I was like, "Okay," she had her 9 to 5 hustle, and then she did everything else on the side, so I knew it was possible that if you wanted to be engaged, be involved, then, if you wanted to make change within your own sphere of
Uh-huh.
influence, you can do that. Um,
Uh-huh.
and then when
Yeah.
so in 2019, I, met my co-founder, our other co-founder, Brandon, and, um, he has an entrepreneurial mindset already, so he
Uh-huh.
really opened my eyes and opened me up to what it means to be an entrepreneur, how you can actually do it, so that was a really big influence on me, just having those people in my life that have kind of walked that path.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's good. So challenges. Did you face any challenges when you were explaining your vision to others?
Um, I think yes and no. One, storytelling is really important and being to articulate what that is
Uh-huh.
always, I compare like running a nonprofit to like raising a newborn. Your first year, you don't know what your child is really gonna look like until they
Uh-huh.
start,
Uh-huh.
getting into that 2, 3, and then they start
Uh-huh.
talking at 3, and so now they have, like, their own vocabulary and their own but it takes all that time to develop. So I think,
Yeah.
when I look back, we submitted a letter to the Lilly Endowment, and this was in
Like
2020.
your first year?
Mhm, yeah,
Okay.
um,
Okay.
and I was just, but
Yeah.
it's all still the same. I had
Yeah.
3 programs. We run 3 programs, so
Uh-huh.
everything has still been the same. It hasn't
Yeah.
changed. The mission hasn't changed. I think the way that other people see it and other people understand it for themselves and how other people have experienced it for themselves is that X factor. Now
Yeah.
that we have our learning center, people can feel the
Uh-huh.
environment. They can
Uh-huh.
feel the community. They can feel the culture. Whereas your first year, you don't really have any of that. Um,
Right.
it's
Right.
all just a thought, and it's trial and error, so I
Yeah.
think, part of my role is really and part of, like, who I am as an individual is really understanding, how we can how we can develop culture and community,
Yeah. For
and that
sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
way beyond your executive just
Yeah.
what's in your executive title, in your
Yes.
executive role.
Yes. Yes. Because you're creating a culture, right? And that's not in your job description,
No.
right? And I heard you mention you have the same programs as when you first started. So how did you fund your first program?
So we started with tutoring, and that was really in response to schools debating whether to go back or not in person. When we did go back, I was still teaching, and I had 30 students in my classroom. I had 15 of them in person and 15 of them online. I had the most students out of anyone in my school with both populations.
Mm,
So I was really tasked with how to use technology to integrate learning. I had 4 different screens. I had
mhm,
my projector, I had my
mhm,
second screen, my second monitor with all my online students, I had my smart board, I had my document camera, I had my main computer screen, and, so I was looking at all of this, and I was, looking at some of my colleagues, and I was thinking, they're not even scratching the surface of what I have to do to make this shake. And I'm like, "Why am I the least paid person here?" And so I think, because
mhm,
of all of that big debate and then
mhm,
seeing how my skills and my assets can extend so much further outside of just my classroom. We partnered with IPS. That was our first contract, and they had ESSER dollars. So ESSER was the COVID recovery money that the government gave out, and they were giving that money to schools to support
mhm,
literacy, to support learning loss, a lot of different things. Some of it was like to upgrade their HVAC systems to have
mhm.
proper ventilation. Some of it
Right.
was to purchase technology because IPS, they were not one to one. Everyone did not have a computer when COVID hit.
Right.
So
Right.
that, yeah, just trying to figure all those things out. So that's how we got our first
Mhm.
pot of funding.
Yeah. Interesting. And so, did you dive into like grants, individual donors, events, and like what did you learn from like those early efforts of fundraising to support your programs?
Yes. So I live in a family where you don't ask for money, you don't talk about money. There's, some shame in the conversation around money. So it was definitely really hard for me to conceptualize, like, how am I gonna make this sustainable and long lasting? And I think I'm still trying to figure a lot of those things out. We
Mhm,
started off, with our contracts, and because we were like, okay, this is working, a lot of people were willing to pay for tutoring at that time. Um, we started to apply for grants, but we didn't quite have the data. Tutoring isn't something that you can see results with overnight. You can't articulate numbers the same way if you're like a food pantry. We're not counting that impact every single time with every single item. It's a little bit deeper than that. Um, so we started to get into grants, got, denied for a lot of grants at first, and then it was really a conversation of, "Okay, we just need to have the data." And then when we started to get the data, we started to get the grants. And then now I think we're in a stage where we're really opening up to donors, corporate sponsorships, things like that, and it's definitely a lesson. I'm trying
mhm,
to work my network all the time, and that's another thing coming out of the teaching profession is your network is very limited to other teachers. I could
mm.
never, just leave the school day in the middle of the school day. That was
Yeah.
not possible.
Yeah.
So, it's taken me some time to develop this network. There's definitely some barriers and some
Yeah.
roadblocks, but my goal right now is to be in any room that you wouldn't expect me to be in, because that is where I'm going to be able to pull in those monthly donors, pull in those other types of support. And now that we have our learning center, they can come and feel it. They can experience it for themselves.
Yeah. That's great. Well, congratulations to you for persevering through. And our title, right, as we talk about Listen to Our Future with Miss Lillian Barkes, the CEO and co-founder of Listen to Our Future, is when purpose meets perseverance, right? Raising funds to raise voices. And when I think about the importance of, building trust with funders and community, was that a challenge when your organization was still new because you didn't have, those measurements and impacts, and you're advocating to the support for your mission?
Yes, I would say that it was hard for people that didn't know me, right?
Yeah.
Because our first contract was with like, our first, after school and summer contract was with the Bonner Center, and I had worked there, and I had worked with the director, so they already knew what I was capable of. When we got our first contract with IPS, the person that was in charge of enrichment programming, she had previously been the supervisor to my principal, and they would do walkthroughs of our school multiple times a year. So she was in my classroom multiple times a year, and she's seen me teach.
Mhm.
So the proof was in the pudding. The track record is there. And now, because we've been around for 5 years, other people are starting to see that. There's validity in that.
Yeah,
There's confirmation, right?
that's
And I
right.
think that's what people really look for when it comes to trust is, do you have the track record? Do you have the track record to do what you say you're going to do? And do you have I guess, the skill, humbleness
Mhm,
to admit when things aren't going well, and how to
mhm,
adjust and how to pivot and how to create true partnership and true community. Because, uh, you know, someone in your family, they're when you don't do something right the first time, they're not gonna just shut you out. They're not gonna turn you
mhm,
away. They're gonna figure it out. They're gonna make sure that, but I think a lot of times people are afraid to give feedback, and people are afraid to, not just give it, but take it and then do something
mhm,
with it.
for
But I
sure.
think where, if we're gonna talk about being in community and partnership with one another, I'm not going anywhere. So if you're
Mhm.
not gonna go anywhere, then we might as well sit and talk and figure it out.
That's right. That's right. And that's one of the things I advise a lot on too, is to also talk about the challenges you're having in your organization, because it's okay, right?
Mhm.
Whatever the challenges are, talk about them, because your funder, your relationship with your contributors may have some resources for you, right? And help you with either your storytelling, your relationship building, your measurements, right? Your tracking, to help you with that fundraising success. So talk about it all, right? And it's okay. And so, how does it correlate when you're talking about your story and your vision, and you have to hear no over and over again? Like, how do you handle those reactions, especially in the early stages when you are passionate about getting going?
Um, I had to go to therapy. That was the first thing. Like, I had to go to therapy, not because I was getting told no, but because it was hard. Everything was hard. And I think I have learned to take no's as not yets. I have learned to take no's as a blessing in disguise.
Mhm.
It, I think when I started listening to Our Future, and I was in a time where I had no idea what we were gonna do. I just got to a point where I was like, "I surrender. I don't know what I'm doing. Lord, take this from me because I can't carry the burden
Mhm.
of all of this by myself.
Yeah,
And let alone do I know what it's even gonna look like tomorrow, the next day, the next day. I don't even know if I'm gonna be here tomorrow to even steward it. So, like, I don't have, uh, as much control over the situation as I think that
yeah,
as you would expect, like, a co-founder or a CEO to have,
yeah.
because there's so many other variables outside of your control. But I think that was something that you had taught me when we were doing, the
Mhm,
mentoring, was just
mhm,
being a good steward and how you can prove to people that you are a good steward. And part of
mhm,
that is being able to be transparent and be honest,
mhm,
about where you fall short, but also where you need help.
Mhm.
taking those no's as learning opportunities, and
Mhm.
there's all
That's
like, I
good.
was telling someone yesterday, there's always going to be like, if everything's good, there's always gonna be that little lining of bad, and if everything is bad, there's always gonna be that little lining of good, so you really
Mhm.
have to decide where your mindset is going to be in those types of situations,
Yeah,
because no
that's
one's
good.
benefit from you being mad all the
Right.
time,
Right. That's
gonna
right.
benefit from you being angry all the time.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Thank you for mentioning therapy, right? Because um, it takes a certain type of understanding to constantly hear no when you are advocating for something you are passionate about. So tell us a little bit about the stats and what fuels your passion. Why is this important? What is it about the literacy, the lack of the education, the test scores? I'm involved in it because, as I said, my daughter's in the fifth grade, so I see the testing reports and I see the medium of what's happening. But tell us how critical this is in the state of Indiana and why these test scores are important for our future.
Yes. So, just some stats, I just pulled them up, that we have collected. We've trained over 250 people to tutor, and I was a struggling reader. I was a reluctant reader. I did not have the money to get outside help, right? And it wasn't until I was introduced to phonics instruction until I really started to do well, and luckily, they caught it early. They caught it early, and I was able to start making honor roll, and I made honor roll every single semester when I was in, middle school all the way, like, honest through college because I was on the dean's list. So, um, early identification is key, but we also live in a state where kindergarten is not mandatory. We do not invest in early childhood education. We just cut the CCDF funding for vouchers for families to even send their children to childcare, and they're not going to get those until 2027. So they're not distributing them at all for 2026. So there's just
Mhm,
the foundation, right?
mhm,
So we're training people in community to just be a advocate for literacy, and I am personally of the belief that literacy happens in community. Literacy is far beyond, "Can you just read what's on this, paper?" It's, "Can you read the world around you? Can you engage in conversation, in a literate conversation based on knowledge, information, lived experiences with the people around you?" And part of that is being able to read what people put out there. It's being able to listen to what people put out there. So I think we need to kind of restructure and reframe literacy because it's always been
mhm,
thought of as, you know, academia. Only certain people were allowed to be educated at one point in
mhm,
time,
mhm.
right? So we create it to be this unattainable thing, and then try to fill in the gap,
Right.
right? When it really is like a communal thing.
Mhm.
And we should use it to, like, go up together, not
That's right.
like,
That's
"Here's a
right.
ladder, only the fittest can
Mhm,
survive."
mhm, mhm.
So there's that. We've worked with over 40 program partners throughout Marion County in the last 5 years. So all of these program partners, they're schools, after school programs, community centers, and part of our model is breaking down as many barriers as we can. We know the main barriers to high quality educational programming is cost and transportation. If we travel to the locations, we're breaking down that barrier. And if we partner with them to mitigate that cost, then we can make it
Mhm.
free for families. And our programs have always been free for families. We've worked with 12 community centers and 25 local schools. I'm a big believer in not reinventing the wheel. We're here to go in and enhance what's already there. So I consider Listen to Our Future program enhancement organization because you know, we're not trying to be the Civil Learning Center. We're not trying to be Kumon. We're not trying to be, we're not trying to be another school. We're just
Mhm.
trying to go in and do what is do different things that maybe their staff don't have the skill sets for. And that was something that I really ran into in the after school world. I believe that I was a good educator because I was an after school youth worker first, and I was a good youth worker because I wanted to be an educator. So, but I was one in I don't know any of my colleagues that actually went to study education. So, there's a lot of people that are very passionate about working with youth, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're educators, and just because you're an educator doesn't even mean you're good at working with youth. So, I wanna put that out there. Um, but that spread me
Mhm.
really thin, and I
Yeah,
just have the capacity to do it all.
yeah, yeah.
And since we've been working in partnership with so many different people, we've been able to service over 3,000 students, and we've done over 20,000 hours of face-to-face instruction. So these are the real impacts. And while yes, the state is saying um, literacy iRead rates are up 10 points, we also just held back so many students because they didn't pass. And you have
Now
to
talk about
continue.
that, Lillian. Talk about that with the kids that are now being held back and what the
Yes.
average scores are, because the third grade scores is where they're being held back, right? If they don't pass the is it the I read, the I learn testing, right?
Yes.
And what's the average rate of testing for the third graders?
So I would have to pull it up, and it's so incredibly different, right?
Mm-hmm,
Because
mm-hmm,
each school uses a different curriculum and each school has access to different resources. So
mm-hmm,
IPS, for example, we were using the curriculum HMH when I was teaching, and there were what, like 60, 70% of students passing iRead across the board. If you look specifically at individual schools, it was like 40% were passing.
mm-hmm,
Right? Part of what I do is pick up books all across
mm-hmm,
Indiana for our resource library, and sometimes people will give me, like, their children's old curriculum, from the previous school year, and Hamilton Southeastern is using the same exact curriculum that IPS once used, and they're sitting at an 80% pass at a 90% pass rate. I think their
mm-hmm,
lowest school was at a 93% pass. So here we have the same curriculum in communities that
mm-hmm,
are just 30 minutes away from each other, and we
mm-hmm,
have students that are failing over here and students that are doing just fine. So it's not necessarily the curriculum. And I know in a lot of schools, they've had so many students that are being held back that they're creating a new classroom for them and they're calling
mm-hmm,
it grade 3.5 or grade 3 plus. Now, if you're in like Hamilton Southeastern, that might only be 1 or 2 kids because you're sitting at a 93% pass rate,
mm-hmm,
and that's at their
mm-hmm.
lowest school. I think overall they were at like a 98%.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's a very low percentage, and
yeah.
there are still good cause exemptions, so certain students, depending on if they have an IEP, in special education, or if
Mm-hmm,
they're a newcomer into the country and they don't have the language proficiency, then they get an exemption and they can continue to move on. But for our students that have been here, that are really struggling, and a lot of times these are the students with not just they're behind in their learning, they also have behavior that accompanies that. You know,
mm-hmm,
students, they will develop maladaptive behaviors very early
mm-hmm.
if they don't wanna do something or if
Right.
they have a negative feeling towards something, they're of course gonna have a negative reaction to it.
Yeah.
And so I think part of our challenge is getting students over that barrier of here's all the emotion that goes along with learning, and then here's the actual learning. Um, and then when you get standardized tested 4 to 8 times every single year, I don't see how you can just be a happy learner in that
Right,
environment.
right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm a parent, so I love diving into this because we know as a country that prison systems are built off of, test scores, right? The failing the children, the percentage of kids that don't have that aren't testing in the right percentile. So we
Mhm.
know this is critical. Literacy is critical, and it's a community um, issue, right? And so going back to just understanding um, managing a nonprofit, right? What do you wish someone had told you before you started fundraising for Listen to Our Future?
Um, I wish someone told me to just be brave and continue to be brave, show up and be brave. I think it's the little voice inside of me that is the one that continually will kinda try to just pull you down into, "You can't do it, you don't have the
Hmm.
skill to do it, you don't belong here." But
Hmm.
I think if someone were to really come alongside me and, just remind me to be brave, just do it. People like you, like, "Hey." And if people don't like you, that's okay too.
That's right.
So I think just,
That's right. That's
someone
right.
to encourage that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Well, you are brave
Mhm.
and you are making phenomenal progress. And so, how do you balance, funding your programs and covering your operational needs?
That's a great question. I mean, Warren Buffett says that you should have 7 streams of income. I say in the nonprofit world, you need 11.
Mhm, mhm, mhm,
So if you don't have 11,
mhm,
then you need to find 11.
mhm, mhm.
If and you want your 11 to be annual things, you want them to be maybe things that you could sell, maybe things that are on like a monthly basis. Maybe it's so we have programming that operates on like a 5-week cycle, a
Mhm.
semester-long cycle, a year-long cycle. So I think, when I talk about like diverse streams of funding, it's not just diversity in what they are, it's also diversity in how they pay out.
Yeah.
Some of your funding might be on a reimbursement schedule, some of your funding might be everything up front. Most of it's
Mhm.
on a reimbursement schedule. So I think it's
Yeah.
really being savvy with that. We are as a nonprofit, the credit world is very different. It's hard to get funding for your nonprofit. There are places that will do it, but, we've had to do the whole work around.
Mhm.
There's also factoring. There's ways that you could get paid upfront, and then once the money is dispersed, then the company takes like a percentage that factors it. So there's a lot of different ways to do things. I think you just have to have that diversity and talk to a
Yes.
professional about how you can make it diverse so that way they're all running at a different cycle.
That's right. Yeah. The diversified funding streams is key.
Yes.
Yeah. And so give me three small actions nonprofit leaders can take today, just from your experience of building a stronger fundraising foundation.
Okay. The first one is go on to Eventbrite once a month and register for as many networking events as you can. I've started doing that and it's been so great. Like I just
Good.
show up and sometimes I don't show up because I don't have the time to. But
Yeah.
that's okay because I have like
Yep.
10 of them on my schedule.
Yes. Yes.
Um that's the first thing. The second thing is get a CRM to organize your contacts. Get something to
Mhm.
organize your contacts because then you can start tracking when you reach out to them. You can start running your own personal campaigns. When you run programming all year around, like I'm reaching out to people for summer programming now.
Good.
I'll be reaching out to people for next school year in January.
That's right.
So,
Good.
make sure you have that timeline. If you don't have that
Mhm.
timeline, work with the people around you and lay it out. And
Yeah.
then it's all just on a cycle from there. That's
Yeah.
my second one. And then do the same thing with your grants. Do the
Mhm.
same exact thing with your grants. Have a grant database where you're tracking them, you're tracking the time period. Like, In the past month, I've probably applied for 9 different grants. I have and grants love to all be due on the same day.
Right. Right.
So, if you have
Ah,
your tracking system, you can keep all your ducks in a row,
yes.
and I'm the type of person because I'm literally doing everything.
Yeah.
It'll be 10 o'clock at night, and I'm looking at my grants or I'm looking at my contact sheets and scheduling emails, but either
Mhm.
way, I'm doing one or the other. I'm
Yeah,
either working my network or I'm working my grants,
that's
and
right.
because I have everything just, like, on a nice dashboard, I can just look at it. I don't have to there's not a
Mhm.
big cognitive lift when it comes to logging back in to those
Yeah,
things.
yeah,
It's
that's
just
great.
do. So I can do
Yeah.
it, like, mindlessly when I'm watching TV.
Mhm. Yeah, that's good. The organization is key,
Yeah.
right? And you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, how can listeners support listen to our future?
Follow us on social media, let people know about what we do. Can help families wherever they are. We
Mhm.
have an income-based program. We travel to families as well. We don't send them into their houses, but we will find a convenient place in the community to work with students. And yeah, just really just encourage people and ask them, what are you doing to listen to our future and uplift their ideas?
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate you. I appreciate your journey, your heart, your bravery. So I want to encourage you to keep going and to continue to listen to our future. And if you're listening, you know that passion isn't enough. You need structure, and structure builds sustainability. And Lillian's story shows us how vision must be matched with systems, relationships, and clarity. And so your story is your strongest asset, transparency and authenticity. Attract not just dollars, but long term champions. So funding operations is funding impact, keeping your team supported, keeps your mission alive, and the next generation is watching, right? I say that all the time to my daughter. Like, I know she's watching, so she can figure out what she wants to do and lead in her life. So be ready to lead and invest in our youth. And I thank you, Lillian, for your time. And you can connect with me, Rochelle Jerry Consulting Group, Fundraising Confessions, the truth behind the profession.
Did you love this episode? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and make sure that you don't miss the next Fundraising Confessions episode. And if you've got a story to tell, we want to hear it. This is your platform too. Like, share, and comment below.